of job descriptions. We had over 3,000 job descriptions across BCP, and we've rationalised that into 520 role profiles. And we've been able to do that. We'd probably heard this term before, but the job families concept. So we brought forward 25 job families, which has enabled us to do that. The work stream has we're nearing the end of it. A lot of work's been done on it already. The work stream has a 5-stage process. We've completed up to stage 4, leaving it just with finalising the pay structure stage. So all employees have now been mapped to an agreed role profile, which has been signed off at director level. In terms of workstream 2, this is really important about the terms and conditions. We've been liaising significantly, and I believe on a weekly basis, with trade unions for a significant period of time. I believe it was December 2019, and the proposals prepared have been broken down into 6 categories detailed in the report. Chair, I won't list them here. So negotiation with the trade unions has been ongoing, and we've, it's worth at this point thanking them for their positive engagement in the process to date. Where we need to get to now is, the implementation timetable. So unions will be, needing to, ballot their members. There are still a couple of discussion areas we're working through. The implementation timescale is January 2022, but that is after the unions having a successful ballot on their membership. So, Chair, hopefully that's not too much of a detailed explanation, but otherwise I look forward to answering any questions on it.
Thank you very much, Leader. So I'll now open this up for questions from members, and I think Councillor Millie Earl has indicated.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for running through that. I just wanted to raise a question about pay and reward within the context of children's services at the moment, and also maybe to an extent things like planning and transport, where in the performance review that is in the next item, there, you can clearly see that there's a reflection where some services haven't been, working to what they should be. And I think a lot of those issues are connected to low morale and staff feeling undervalued. And I think it would be helped if you didn't have people in the same office, doing the same job, but getting different pay relating to their job role. So, I mean, we've said January 2022. Is it going to be a case of everyone getting that on the same date, and it will all be merged together, or will there be prioritisation of certain service areas to try and move it forward so we can at least resolve some of those issues? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Thanks, Millie. Really good question. Both because it's about what this is all about, which is around morale and how we become a retention authority where people want to stay here, but also a recruitment authority, people want to come here, all of that. So it's exactly what this is about. Your question, I believe, is around with January 2022. So and we've got Sarah Ray Dean on the call who's led on this work, so she will do more detail. But I know we're not wedded to the fact that it is January 2022 across the board. There will be pockets where agreement will be able to come in sooner, because you're absolutely right. People sitting in the same office or in different offices getting different paid for what is perceived as the same roles, or and there's various different ways that sort of works out. We need to get through as quick as possible. I've long said that this whole transformation agenda, which links to just the quicker we can get it done, the better, because it's not fair on people.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Hilliard.
Thank you, Chair. So just to confirm, so we just completed MAP incumbents stage 4. Has there been redundancy? Obviously, it's a difficult time as we're in the COVID, and people have had to work in different ways and cross over on different responsibilities. But how can we say how many people need to go into what role, because it's been such a difficult year? Has that mapping been carried out? Have redundancies been made?
Chair, if I may? Yeah.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah. Great, thank you, Paul. So a couple of questions in that really. One, yes, the mapping has taken place. So everybody is now in a new, it basically has a new job description, and that role, and that has been assessed and signed off by up to director level. So that piece of work has happened. Have there been any redundancies? Well, any organisation loses people and moves people on at different points for different reasons. As part of the June, last year's budget reset paper, not the reset paper, but your administration's response to the budget, there were some headcount reduction. I believe it was around about 1.4 million, 1.5 million. And I think most of that was due to cancelling vacancies effectively. So there hasn't been any large-scale redundancy programme because of this. Individual departments for individual reasons would have made some redundancies, but not en masse, not on scale. So no, not yet. But we will be looking to, now we've got the job role profiles finished. We are looking to make £15 million of savings in this year coming, so in 21-22. So that process will now start more formally.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jackie Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, with especially the lower paid employees that we have, I know that when some of our services merged with Pool, that some of the Pool employees were paid a little bit less than our Bournemouth ones, and after the 2p finishes, that it would possibly go down to a lower rate. So I think that's quite hard for people who have mortgages and families to feed, and I would like to see that that the rates would not go down where there are different rates. I'd like it if possible, that we could keep people at the better rate of pay, because I think for morale and for their mental health and for everything, that they don't need to worry that their pay would be going down. So has this been considered at all?
Yeah, if I may, Chair. Yeah. So effectively, I understand it entirely. So where we're not trying, it's a mix of different outcomes, effectively, different mix of situations we're inheriting. We're not expecting this to save us money in this process. So we're not expecting this process to be something that we automatically go to the lowest wage. What we've done by putting the job families together is and it's the commonalities in that, so we can actually start to assess what people are doing and what the different rates are. So we're not blanket saying that everybody's going to go up. We're not blanket saying everybody's going to go down, but we're saying we're working through what is the right approach. We're expecting it to be in the median, if not more. So this isn't a cost-saving exercise per se. And if any of the officers want to add in more technical detail, that's fine. I think in terms of you saying we would like to have a blanket decision to always go up. I don't think we're in that situation and in that financial position. But I do hear what the comments you're making, Jackie, and quite clearly we're not using this as a cost down exercise. So we're not automatically moving people down. So people doing the same roles, one was on higher, one was on less, we're not automatically going for the less role. We're re-looking at the roles and then working out across the council what that pay structure should be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Tony O'Neill.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. I've got 3 questions. Looking forward, are roles to be evaluated only on future requirements of a leading council that is fit for purpose, is question 1. Question 2 is pay to be geared to the contribution and productivity of individuals as opposed to historic references which have included the numbers managed, tasks and activities as opposed to the competencies required for future success? And the third question is, once the roles are introduced, will there be a system of annual appraisal so that exceptional performers can be recognised? Thank you.
Do you want to go ahead, Leader?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, it's good questions, Tony. I'll start with the well, start at the beginning. Good place to start. So, you know, are they fit for purpose for a new organisation? I think it's fair to say, by taking the approach that has been taken, that very much this is about looking at it differently. You know, by pooling people into job families rather than saying it's all siloed working effectively. So we're actually looking at what people do. It's about, you know, and linking this so much in with a transformation piece. And transformation, that's not just a journey of saving money, that's a journey of moving us to being that really modern organisation. That much how this has been structured is it's partly on, you know, business as usual. It's partly on where, you know, where we are, but it's actually more around, you know, that massive structural change and that whole organisation sort of thing. So I'm confident that we are looking, and it, you know this better than most people, Tony. Any organisational structure thing is a moving feast, isn't it? You know, this is a big step change, a big step forward, and it will evolve. But effectively, where it is now, confident that is now reflective of a fit for purpose organisation. You know, we should remember we're the 12th largest authority in the country. We should be, you know, we live in one of the best places in the world. Natural environments, you know, people should want to come and work here. So we need to be, you know, reflecting that fit for purpose. It sort of goes into your second question as well, Tony, in terms of, you know, historic, you know, how it's been done. You know, very much that sort of structural piece about how many people you manage in terms of what your role is. You're a manager. You know, we've had lots of examples here. Somebody might manage one person, somebody manages literally hundreds. You know, but that's reflective in their pay. But it actually should be about what their outcomes are. So it's about, this moves it does genuinely move it to a more outcomes driven piece. I actually don't know the second answer to that part of the question, which I'll find out for you. But I think you were reflecting on should rewards. As part of the question was annual appraisal. So yes, there's a rigid annual appraisal process that's there, and you know these organisations are very good at delivering that. The part I don't know the answer to is how flexibly that will allow us to increase pay and benefit, etc. in that. It's a really good question, and it's, you know, it's something we can ask about.
Thank you.
Certainly, you know, yeah. Does the question, Tony?
Yes, it is. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you, Lewis Allison.
Thank you, Chairman. About positive engagement from trade unions, I was just wondering whether we could get some more detail on what kind of positive reaction the trade unions have got to the increased speed of the transformation process, and also in being able to pass that ballot when it comes forwards. And secondly, I just wanted to ask, we've had discussions before about the job losses. With regard to the 500, 600 jobs that are going to be lost, it's my understanding that they're coming in before technology changes have been implemented. So what impact I'm expecting this to have?
Yeah, Leader.
Yeah, thank you, and good questions, Lewis. So the your first question was about unions. So there's a couple of different things in that. One is around the Viscount reward, and what we're trying to do here is actually really quite positive. You know, we're trying to, and as Councillor Earl put in start, you know, our employees are not, you know, in positions at the moment where they're comfortable, they're working on the same parity as other people doing roles. So that's not good. That's not good for them, you know, at all. So what we're trying to do is, through this process, and then also then looking at the terms and conditions, we're trying to make ourselves more attractive, you know, to people to stay here and go. So there's a very positive piece of work happening around it. The engagement's very positive, you know, with the unions. Obviously, there's detail we need to work through, but you then also, it was also that question asked around, you know, the transformation process as well. That's a different, you know, it's slightly different, because effectively we're saying there's a job cutting now that we need to do, and our engagement with unions is different on that than it is on. So I just wanted to draw out that the engagement with unions is we're having different engagement with them. One thing I was really pleased to do was put now trade unions are on the senior leadership equalities group. So you know, which is great. So we're actually trying to promote the unions in that sort of in that process, and that's a large piece of how the transformation work is coming through this, because at every stage of making changes, it's going through this, you know, the senior leadership equalities group, because equalities are a big angle on this. Then secondly, Lewis, you asked about the impact of the 500-600 jobs effectively, the £15 million of savings this year. So yes, when we brought that paper before, we said very clearly this was in advance of how we wanted to do it originally. It's about making savings of people before we're able to have a technological benefits. That paper historically, and I will send you a copy. It explains how we're able to do that, and largely again. So a good example, if communications, you've got somebody sat in one department doing communications and another department. Well, if they're put together department, there are efficiencies that can be made, or is viewed on that way. So really confident it is going to be a challenge. We're trying to save £15 million before the technological savings. So let's not hide from that. But we believe as council has shown what it can do in a new normal. How quickly it can adapt, how quickly our officers can adapt. So we're comfortable because of that work that we've done around primarily. We can actually land that change of those 500, 600 roles with minimal impact. And my last point, Chair, is on this. The whole point around, we drifted a little bit into transformation, quite understandably. The whole point around transformation for me is it's about saving money from effectively back office so we can put it in front office. So it's about how we protect and long-term invest in frontline services. So that's effectively what we're trying to do by the 500-600 job reduction in this year.
Okay, Councillor Lewis, you all right?
Yeah, fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. I can see no further hands raised, but I'd just like to say that that our staff have been, over the last few years, have had an ongoing series of changes with shared services, and then through LGR and now transformation. So there's been this constant state of change and flux, and perhaps uncertainty for a number of individuals. So I was really delighted to hear the leader say there that the unions are being brought in at the executive level to help with this process. But I think that we have to be cognizant of the huge changes and the commitment that staff have been making over such a long period. And it'd be nice to see this process through, so people can then settle down and we can have a little bit of stability for a while. So I think that really concludes that item now. So I'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the scrutiny of transformation and finance-related cabinet reports, agenda item 7. And the subject is the mid-year corporate performance report, which again is, I believe, being introduced by Leader of the Council, Councillor Mellor. Thank you. Would you like to introduce the paper, Drew? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Chair, and really pleased to bring this paper, because I think this is something where ONS can add some real value to it. Where all members can add value to it, because what we're looking in this governance report is the performance, and any performance, and you're looking at the key indicators you're bringing out of that. So these reports can be built around where members want them to go, what things we want to be looking at, as well as what performance KPIs we are looking at currently. One of the I think there's 3 recommendations here, Chair. One of the recommendation is to bring forward suggestions from Cabinet and this committee regarding the KPI setup. So I think this is a really useful way for members to get involved in that. Please, I look forward to people coming up with suggestions, not just on what the data is there, but what else we'd like to look at. And that might be something, as the ONS sort of forward plan evolves, we can actually then link into some of the KPIs can link into that. In terms of the detail of the report here, it's massive. This is we could talk for this for days, let alone hours, because it goes into every part of the authority. How it's structured, it's against the corporate plan. So then you've got further details on the individual delivery plans, and they're RAG rated, red, amber, green rated. So it's quite easy to pick out bits that we want to have a talk about. Year 1 of BCP was used to benchmark data. Obviously, we didn't have data historically, so the data from preceding councils wouldn't have been much use comparing in terms of us. So year 1 was used for benchmark data, and now this second year we can start reporting against it, which should over time become more and more useful. Worth flagging up, Chair, that this is, we don't need me to necessarily say, but the year we're in, the financial year we're in, It has been a year like no other. So we've had COVID, the newness of the authority, and all of the challenges, those both bring. So it's reasonable for this process to need some time to bed in, and some of the exception reports will be in some way answered by the wider context that I've just alluded to. There are some exception reports which, considering them, is another recommendation. So very happy to go through some of those. That they go across the breadth of the council. So you can quite happily, if there's something we can't get through now, then look to get an answer back very shortly. So I just take the opportunity, I think it's worth doing, Chair, to thank all of our officers that have delivered the performance we have achieved here. I think it's quite right that when you're looking at exception reporting, we look at some of the things we need to make improvements in, but by our officers, in the last 18 months. And let's reflect on that briefly and just thank them for what we have achieved, and we'll also look to work through some of the performance issues that we've got. Chairman, I'll leave it there. I think the report's quite self-explanatory. The deck in itself is I think well set out in terms of being able to pick out questions, myriad of different ways we could take this, Chair. So I'll leave it to your members.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'll open this up to members. I mean, it's a very comprehensive report, and understandably, some issues on the KPIs will have changed significantly over the period because of COVID and the situation that we've had. So that you will expect to see some exceptions to what we hoped we would have been able to achieve. And so obviously, we've had quite an impact in some areas. But can I just go to members and see if anybody's got anything that they'd like to raise on the report, please? I'm not seeing it. Oh, yes, I have. No. Just a moment, please. Is that you, Councillor Borthwick?
Yes.
OK, go ahead then, please.
In previous councils, the Bournemouth Council, KPIs didn't prove value for money. Are they going to be value for money this time? Seemed a lot of work was put in, and it didn't seem to give out the reward we were hoping for.
Leader?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for that question, Derek. Look, this is I really understand that. I think it's a commitment to good governance, whether you're in a large organisation or a small one. It's about picking out the key, and key word here is key, performance indicators. So a massive breadth of work sometimes can be difficult to ascribe value to, but we do have a corporate strategy. We do have deliverables from it. So it's only right that we check whether we're delivering it. Otherwise, that document is just something we waft around in the air. So it's a good challenge. We need to make it work effectively is the answer, and I think that's part of my introduction. Let's own it. Let's make damn sure that some of the things that we want to drive are in it. And are being reflected in it, because then it can be useful. So it's like anything, good data going in, good data going out. But it's our use of it, both in terms of setting up what data we're asking for and how we utilise the data. So it's up to us, bluntly, to make it value for money, I would suggest, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. Are you content, Councillor Borthwick?
Certainly, Chair. I'm
Yeah.
satisfied. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I just don't end up with loads of red, blue, and yellow dots, and they don't mean anything.
Yeah. Understood.
So do I, Derek. So do I. Yeah.
I'm not sure. Councillor Cox, have you indicated?
I have, yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I just want to echo what you just said about the use of this document. I've often come across very detailed sets of accounts, management accounts, which are produced and then put on a shelf and not used. They're a complete and utter waste of time unless people who read them use them and are useful to them. I think that's the key in all this. One thing I just commented on in terms of this report itself, I appreciate why nothing was produced for the first quarter because of the conditions at the time. But having said that, can we not just produce the information for the first quarter and have it along there as a comparative? These documents tend to be useful when you can compare one quarter against the other. And if we rather than just starting at quarter two, if we could have quarter one and quarter two, that would, I think, would be far more useful.
the other point I just wanted to raise in terms of the presentation was that a number of the items are not necessarily quarterly. They seem to be annual. One, if they are, then there's no point in them being there. So you might as well just leave them till the last quarter. It just confuses the presentation of it, in my opinion. That was one point. The other point is, can they not be quarterly? I suppose is the other one. But the one item that I have picked out from here that does cause concern, and it is something that has been brought out in other meetings this year, is the performance of the planning department, which seems to have certainly gone into the red. And I just wondered what measures are being taken to make sure that is addressed as soon as possible.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Chair, and thank you, Mike. I agree with you about the first question about the quarterly piece. Yeah, it's that comparison stuff is really useful. It's about direction of travel and movement, isn't it? And where we're going on things. We might still be in the red, but if it's going in the right direction, or green and it's going the other way. So yeah, you and I, with our backgrounds, aren't going to disagree in that, and I'll take that. I'll see if we're about feeding that in. I'd agree slightly less about the annual piece and whether it should be in there to the end of it. I'll reflect on it. I guess my sort of reaction when you were saying that was around, well, end of the year, but you also have balance sheets at various points of the year, and they're useful. So it's that spot in time. So where is it in that spot in time? But I'll reflect on it and see if we can create it and shape it in such a way. And if you've got any other comments around how this should actually be put together for next time, perfectly happy to meet with you and the officers putting it together, and we can work those in. So just as if we're going to own this document, then we might as well own all parts of it and how it's built up and put together. So very happy to arrange a time to do that if that's useful. The last question was specifically in relation to the planning department, and look, some difficult position really. But some excellent work. We've got some excellent officers in that department. We've got a very passionate committee. We have a problem. There we do. It's always going to be difficult bringing 3 different ways of working across. We know that. We now need to get to the bottom. We now need to fix it really quickly, because we're talking about the previous administration. We're talking about a significant investment in regeneration. We're absolutely talking about that and more. So just from our own perspective, having a planning department that with those KPIs, that's not useful to delivering our corporate priorities. What are we doing about it? So the new portfolio holder is and working really closely with the head of planning, and we're working regularly with that, myself and Graham Farrant as well. So there is a work stream in place. One of the main things is it's being one of the early, and this is probably really important. So both planning and children's services put their hands up and said, we want to be part of that transformation process early rather than at the back end of it. So what we're doing, and what I believe Nick Perrins would say if he was here, would be that piece of work around job families and restructuring will enable them to genuinely put that team together. Which would be really useful. So it's absolutely, I promise you, it's one of our main corporate priorities. To get that fixed. We see the numbers are not lying, and we're working on it. And I think there's some budget implications in the budget. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Councillor Cox.
Okay. Councillor David Kelsey, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Leader. Just going back to what you were just saying about the planning department, I too, I'm glad that we're doing some work within the planning. It really is. Trying to work with 3 different, still not good. It's delaying people's work abilities drastically. So the sooner we get that done, and I'm glad that they're wanting to be part of it. One of my real questions, though, was on page 48 of the report. There is one section there where it just says we're talking about the ASB team. And it says they've been waiting to replace their senior ASB officer for over a year now. They've been advertising for it. What are we doing to make sure that some of these vacancies that are outstanding are now being looked at to be filled sooner rather than later? I know it goes back to your previous paper, Leader, but I thought it was more representative of this paper. This is why I've asked it now.
Yeah.
Okay, Leader.
Thank you, and thank you, Dave. Yeah, so I agree with you. I think one of the things we've done is, and we've made this tune relatively consistently, not trying to be political about this, but effectively, a recruitment freeze isn't an answer to a problem of financial difficulty. You need to actually recruit more in certain areas than others. So what we've been trying to do is to sort of reposition our financial concept. So you're able to invest in areas you need to invest in. So if something is a priority, let's invest in it. So that's a financial piece on it. I don't know the specific answer in terms of the antisocial behaviour, but we can I'll make sure we feed that answer back into you. But we are saying invest where you need to. Because and that's a general context piece, and you'll see through some of the work we're bringing forward in the budget in February. There are investment areas, and there are more investment areas than there were. There's more spend because that's how we're trying to reposition the council's financial context. So thanks for bringing it up. I'll get you a specific answer on OSB, and otherwise I hope my generic answer is of some use.
Thank you for that answer, Leader. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Earl.
Thank you, Chair. So just going back to planning a moment, I mean, I think a lot of councillors have experienced delays, and in my case, I've got quite a significant delay on one particular planning application, which is driving me up the wall. And I understand that COVID has obviously played a part in that. I think what we've seen is maybe other departments be able to cope a bit more, and I wasn't particularly convinced by the report a bit further down by the director. That it was swiftly rolled out, because there are clearly some delays. But what I did want to ask specifically, though, is it says that processing times have dropped below the national intervention levels, and I wanted to ask if there has been any intervention yet from government, or if they're waiting until COVID is a bit more recovered. And just following on from that, we've also heard that there's an action plan in place, and I think where we had the issue with children's services, and we were able as group leaders to look at the action plan and understand more about what was going to change and how, whether that would be useful as well for planning. Obviously it's still a really important area, and I think the service level is really important for residents. So if you could give some answers to that, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Two parts to that question. In terms of intervention, no national intervention, but what needs to happen now is massive intervention locally. From us, we need to move this forward. I don't think anybody's saying there isn't an issue here. We do. The transformation, draw you back to transformation. That is the way to do it, and potentially investment. We're working out now whether we need more investment or it's just about restructuring and bringing the systems together. So no in terms of national intervention, but let's be honest, if we keep performing as we are, we won't go far away. Interestingly, in terms of your discussion on the action plan, effectively in terms of what we're doing there, I've been leading this council for what, three months. This is one of our largest issues. Any meeting we're in, this is raised. This is a problem for us all, and it's not a political thing. I would absolutely value, more member involvement in actually how we fix and sort that problem out effectively, and really positively. So the department has acted really positively by putting its hand up and saying we need to be at front of the queue in terms of transformation. Members doing the same. So if there was a working party or whatever to come out of this, then I'm very happy with that. Very happy to keep group leaders updated with this in the same way as we're doing with the children's piece as well. So perhaps whether it's one for now or one to discuss outside of this, I'm really open door around how we move this forward as members. I see Councillor Earls raised again. So I don't know if you wanted to come back, Councillor.
Is that all right, Chair?
Yeah, go on.
I mean, I agree. I think, and I'm glad you've acknowledged it. I really appreciate that. I think we can all see that from the performance review that is an area of difficulty, and also from our own experiences as councillors. And I dread to think what the experience is then for residents. But I wonder if there is something in the budget that could be looked at to getting a few new staff or a few more planning officers just to deal with that backlog, to at least catch up to where we are, because obviously where COVID had an impact, there is that large backlog, and that's really impacting on the current service. So maybe that's something to take away and think about a bit more about budget priorities as we move towards the next budget.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm asking the same questions effectively. So absolutely we will. And to be really clear, if this is a financial problem, we will put more money into it, because this is a priority. We need to get right. We need to fix it. It's not just that. It never is just that. But if there is more money that needs to go into it, we will do that. But thank you. And we speak outside in terms of how we liaise properly on it. Cheers.
Thank you, Leader. Before I move on to the next person, can I ask Councillor Kelsey if he's put his hand up again, or if that's a historic one?
No, Chairman, my hand's not raised. That must be a historic one.
Okay, well, it's just gone out, so thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Andrews, I believe, followed by Councillor O'Neill. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with the hand indications, not unusually, but yeah, thank you, Councillor Andrews.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, on the matter of planning, again, you know, the director does say that a temporary short-term staff would help solve the problem. Obviously, we've got this backlog of work to sort out, and I think it's particularly important to put this money in as soon as possible. The point is, you know, with my job, I meet and discuss things with planners, and they are getting frustrated with the delays. You know, there's lots of excuses, you know, IT problems, COVID, everything like that. But if we can actually improve the planning turnaround, and I know other local authorities are having problems as well, but if we can actually do it in BCP and get some of these planning applications granted, it will actually mean that when we come out of COVID, you know, hopefully in the summer, these consents will be granted. Developers, investors in the BCP area can actually crack on and invest money in the town without having to wait another few months for the planning applications to be approved. So if I had a bit of spare money, I would definitely get some temporary staff to get rid of this backlog and get some of these marvellous applications which are outstanding to be granted or refused or negotiated upon and re-applications put in. But it's, I think, vitally important that we note what the director is saying, that he needs some temporary assistance. Thank you.
Yeah, Leader.
Yeah, agree. Just agree. You know, agree in all parts of that, Marcus. We are asking what do you need right now and how and what do you need long term. So that those conversations are ongoing. And I guess the conversation is we've been looking much forward in terms of the budget round, which, you know, literally in the next 2 weeks, I think it's a week on Friday, you know, lands in the public domain. So we've been looking more at that long-term bit. There is that piece between now and April that we're also asking the question about, and that's probably where we do sooner. So that comment this is really helpful, and I agree. I'm glad all members are on the same page with this, and we will take that forward, Chair and Marcus.
Thank you very much. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I don't think anybody would deny that the preceding months have been very, very challenging for many the council, and many are dedicated to delivering the best they can. I mean, that statement doesn't deny the responsibility of directors and senior managers to direct and manage. But looking forward, the paper stresses or highlights the importance of KPIs or performance measures. And it indicates within the paper that these will be used for prioritisation and the allocation of resources, linking team, personal performance to agreed priorities. My question really is, in practical terms, how will that be managed, and how will it be ensured that poorly managed resources are not over-allocated investment? Thank you.
Leader. Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, really interesting question. So how is that going to be managed? It's going to be managed at a directorate level through their existing teams and existing procedures. I think where that becomes really interesting is that then at what point do we then say, when you're looking in the budget round, well, actually, what more resource or less resource needs to go into somewhere, and that's exactly the point of a KPI exercise, isn't it, or a set of accounts, because it's not about the numbers, it's about the story, and it gives you that opportunity to then go and see what sits behind it. So, you know, if we've got teams that are performing brilliantly, you know, there's certainly, and we see that through having good, you know, KPIs. So then we'll be able to see, and okay, well, actually, how you're doing it, what you're doing, what else could you do, and we could invest on that way. more interesting one is actually if teams aren't performing well, then it's a case of, well, actually, is it saying, well, you need more money, or is it say, well, actually, we're going to take some stuff away from you? And there's no right answer there. It's about going, and planning is a good example, because you go and sit down with them and they say, well, actually, we need transformation effectively, and part of that's cultural and part of that's financial. So it just sort of highlights the point of doing this exercise, really, doesn't it? So you can actually see where performance is, and then link it into your understanding of where we want to put our resources and our priorities. But I will say, if performance isn't working, we work in an environment here where we have to perform. As members, it's right to be held account about these performance areas. Certainly as officers as well. So we are going to put the resourcing into this exemplar council. We will not be on an LGR journey forever. We will not be in COVID forever. We will need to perform. We will not be looking for excuses. We'll be looking for performance. And we're getting a lot of it. And we're getting a lot of it. Really good performance. It's just some areas we need to do some more work on now. Sorry, I'm telling you, I've gone a little bit around the houses in answering that. But does that answer the?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think the importance is actually investing, allocating resources to the right area and acknowledging the difference between the need for resource or the need for management. Yeah. I'm just going to come back and say it's about organisational, the organisational piece, isn't it? And this is your point you made earlier around, is it historic, hierarchical structures with people, or is it around results and outcomes? So I think what I can do is take some real confidence and hopefully give some confidence to members in the fact that we are on that journey to being a modern, large, organisation that is really adaptive, and has good data and has good structures. We none of the authorities we've inherited were that modern in terms of the way their organisation is structured. Which gives you difficulty in terms of aligning resources to performance and priorities, etc. So there's a real opportunity to do it differently, and that's one of the benefits of LGR, isn't it? Bringing these places together, we can bring serious expertise to the table to make sure this is an exemplar authority. Yeah. Lovely. Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Howell.
Yes, thank you. My question just relates to the mandatory training item, which obviously stands out like a sore thumb. Yeah. I just obviously needs more explanation, because it's saying the target is 100% and we're hitting 2.1%. Having look at the later explanation document, the exception report, the reason for the level of performance doesn't stack up to me. It says that when people came and joined the authority, they used this system, and perhaps that's suggesting that they are doing the training, but they're not entering the revised training back into the system. If they're just not getting reminded by the system and they're not doing not doing the training, then what is the training that they're missing out on? Presumably, if it's mandatory, it's important. Perhaps you could just talk around that indicator and the reasons.
Yeah.
Why.
Yeah, happy to talk around it specifically, and we come back more specifically, Mark, in terms of it. One of the general things around these types of indicators, when you get something so out, it's actually, well, then is there something wrong with the data? What's actually, let's look underneath that and let's understand what's underneath it. Because it's not, because either the target's wrong or the data's wrong in some extent, because you're not going to have, if mandatory, everybody should do mandatory training, and then basically nobody's doing it. So what it does is unearth, so now we go on and we dig underneath that and we answer the question. So I don't know specifically in terms of the answer. Very welcome for if anybody's got a specific, any of the officers on the call have got a specific answer to that particular thing. It's obviously one of the ones we're taking away and having a really in-depth look at. So yeah.
Well, can I ask that we as a committee get an email from an officer to explain the situation there, particularly what the mandatory training is that they're required to do, and explanations why that's not happening.
Yeah, great. I've got Matty on the call. Matty Radstep on the call as a senior officer who might better bring some light to that now, Chair. But if not, we will definitely do that, Councillor Howe, in terms of.
Thank you, Leader. I see Matty is on the line now. So, Matty, could I ask you to speak on this?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Leader. I think there's a bit of all of that in the problem we're facing. I think there is an element of the renewable training not taking place because the reminders and so on that's described in the exception report not going out. So there's some kind of organisational issues that we need to get a better handle on so that people know they need to do their renewed training. And I think there's an issue about being clear, obviously during the COVID period, making sure that the opportunities are still there for people to do the training they need to do, even if they're not in a normal working environment. But I'm happy to take away an action just to flesh out the extent of that mandatory training that Councillor Howes has referred to, just to make sure the board is aware of what the extent of it is. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So yeah, we'll take an action to get that out to all members. I'm glad that you raised that one, Councillor Howell, because it was one that I picked up on as well, as was the planning ones raised by Councillor Cox. But if anything, this does serve to show that this plan is of use. And it does highlight to members where some of the issues are. Unfortunately, like a lot of plans, it shows how far you are behind sometimes, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't see anybody else indicating. So I think that will conclude. I just wanted to make sure that we're content with the recommendations that have been made.
Sorry, Councillor Bartlett, I just wanted to ask something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that because I'd sort of seen that about the mandatory training, but I was just interested as to whether we actually had some mandatory training as councillors, especially with the GDPR. I do remember some training, but whether it was 3 years ago or whether it was 2 years ago, I can't honestly remember. So I wondered if there were certain things that the councillors themselves should be trained on as well, and perhaps the officer could come back about that, please. Thank you.
Anything you want to add, or is Matty still on the line?
Yeah, all I would, I'm not sure Matthew's on the line. All I'd say is, so we're having a constant discussion with Susan Zayas and Legal and Democratic around, how we bring forward more member engagement, member training. So there is stuff coming on that. I think your question, Jackie, was a bit more specific to what actually we should be doing, mandatory stuff we should be doing effectively, which I would not be the best person to answer that on. But I see Matty's here as well.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I was just going to say that I think there's a bit of a distinction between the mandatory training that officers have to complete and the training that we would like members to complete. And the list of topics will probably be different, and the imperative for that to be completed might be slightly different. But I can along with the clarification on the mandatory training for officers, I'm happy to provide some clarification of what is available and what training we encourage members to do as well in the same email, if that's okay.
Thank you. You're right with that, Councillor Edwards?
Yes, that's fine. Yes, thank you. I mean, I do remember the GDPR one and how terrifying it was about it, how it was brought across to us. So I think, yes, any mandatory training or extra training for us would be very welcome. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I guess it would be useful for all members to understand the extent of training that they are required to undergo. I guess we can all sort of volunteer to take the training as and when we feel that we need it. Councillor Howell, is your hand up again?
I'm sorry, no, it's not.
Okay. Are we all done then, members? It appears that we are. I just wanted to cover over the recommendations on the paper. If there are no dissent from the recommendations that are on the report, I'll move on to the next agenda item. Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item 8, scrutiny of tourism, leisure and cultural related cabinet reports. And this is next item is about setting up the BCP Cultural Compact, a very interesting subject, which I know is near to some people's hearts. And I'd like to ask Councillor Mohan Iyengar, who's the portfolio holder for Tourism, Leisure and Culture, to introduce this paper. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon, committee members. The paper in front of you is recommending to Cabinet 3 particular things. The first is a 3-year package of investment to set up the compact, develop the strategy and start the implementations. Second recommendation, to agree the report and the recommendations of the BCP Cultural Action Group. And the third one is to support the idea that the compact embodies the Council's equality, diversity and inclusivity principles. Just a step back, committee members, I'm absolutely delighted to be bringing this item for your scrutiny and with your recommendations to be taking it forward to Cabinet. I'll give full credit to the previous administration, to the former portfolio holder, Councillor Howell, initiating this piece of work, or to be more accurate, it was initiated in the legacy 3 councils of BCP and then picked up by and led by Councillor Howell through to up to a couple of months ago. It's an excellent piece of work. I'm proud now to be taking it on and now to be championing this going forward. Culture is about people. Let me say a little bit about how I feel about this entire subject. Culture is absolutely about people, about ideas, norms and behaviours through which individuals and groups identify themselves and express that identity to others. Defined like this, it means then that culture is everywhere, and sometimes some areas are written about and may be covered in the media more than others, but culture is literally something that touches and engages everyone. It's about the way people dress, the foods we eat, the places we live and gather, the behaviours we exhibit, habits we have, rituals, the possessions we have and that we treasure, and the way we interact with others and the way we go about our day. Everything, all of that falls within the definition of culture. And the way we've got going forward now is that we have the opportunity now to grow and develop that and take quite a step forward in the way that we do it. Described like this, the Cultural Compact is a broad and all-inclusive thing. It includes everyone and it touches pretty well everything. I think you'll have probably gleaned from the documents that you've seen, and I do understand there's quite a lot of documents, is that it's representing a new way forward. For those of you who, many of you may be familiar with Cultural Compact, some of you may be new to it, this is something of national significance and championed among others by the Arts Council England. And I'm very proud to say that, again, through the previous administration's leadership and now with us taking it on, BCP is in the fortunate position of being in the front-running group nationally of organisations, of conurbations taking such a thing forward. And for that, I think we should be both grateful and proud and equally keen not to lose the momentum on this at all. Okay. The particular facets of Compact, because with something as intangible as this, we need some structure to actually make something happen. The structure will be partners across artisans, across education, across health, across leisure, business, government, everywhere. What we're looking up to do is set up a compact that is an organisation of all the people, frankly, who need to be there, who've got something to contribute in this particular area. We want to have them together and we want to create an entity which is linked to the council, but not integral to the council, where the council has a strong, close relationship with it, but is not completely owning it. We've got to let actually the energy and the ideas flourish. So the setting up of a compact. It will have a separate identity, and you'll see in the papers whether it's a community investment company or some other format, and this is to be determined, and that will enable such a broad and enabling stance. The people in it I've mentioned, the people, many of whom you'd expect to be there because we tend to know them in cultural discussions, but I'll be more than happy that we have a good number of people who certainly I have never met before. I guess many of us have never met before, because in discussions like this, in forums like this, they tend not to be seen, and those are the people we've got to be reaching out to. And the final bit on this is about there's got to be a plan. So we've got the construct, we've got the format, and we need a plan. And I didn't intend committee members to go into the details of the plan. There's things in front of you and much is to be determined, but the plan will fit under the three headings of talent, infrastructure and place. And the way I've thought about that myself is the T for talent on literally how do we nurture from the ground up, how do we recognise and nurture individual talent and groups of talented people? How do we actually make that happen? The thing on the infrastructure, I think, is most appropriately put as the networks and the groups of people. How do we foster networks and groups of people? Because often it needs cohorts of people coming together to make ideas take flight and to actually create something of substance. And then the third part, the P, is about the place on this. And the place is venues, micro venues, places where people can gather. But of course, then it gets up to the bigger stuff, which is to do with some of our bigger venues where some of the bigger happenings may occur. But it also, it's sort of more intangibly the things around how we can sort of curate our streets, our parks, our open spaces and so on, so that they not just enable, but they actually actively encourage cultural activity to happen as well. And there's a hell of a lot of work to do there. We've got some catching up to do in BCP. Sometimes we look across the way, we look at places elsewhere in the country. Having said that, we're in the front group of nationally, which I'm pleased about. Look across at Bristol, you know, we have 5 what's called national portfolio organisations in the Arts Council list, and we receive a total of £15 million per year from them. Bristol has closer to 20 organisations and receives more than just nearly double what we get, about £28 million, and that occurs right now. So if that's a reasonable point of reference, that's the step change that is available to us right now. There is money out there, support out there, if we can construct this and move it forward with pace and with purpose. And the other thing I'd mention is, let's not go, leave it unnoticed. Of course, there will be a census happening this year as well, March the 21st. And of course, it may take a while for the results to appear to us, but we'd like to use this as an opportunity to really understand our populace in BCP a lot better and to use those results for advantage. So you have the recommendations, committee members. The budget is there, subject to seismic things happening. The budget is there. I'm supporting the budget provision for this. All of Cabinet is. And I do recommend this report to you, and I'll absolutely welcome your recommendations, observations as well. I ought to say, by the way, I'm joined on this call by, I do apologise, Beverly, Councillor Beverly Dunlop, lead member for cultural events. She and I will be very happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you so much for that very comprehensive introduction, Councillor Iyengar. Members, can I open it up for questions, please? I'm having trouble seeing hands up. Okay, Councillor Howe. Sorry, I'm not seeing hands. Go on, but I see it's up there now. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to thank Councillor Iyengar for his kind words, and I would also like to say I'm very pleased that you know, he's taking the lead on culture, and it's clear from what he says that it's something that is, you know, he takes very seriously, and you know, it's something that he wants to progress and enjoys himself. So, thank you for that. I think in the words about Bristol, and Bristol is naturally the comparator, I think, but to some extent Brighton, but Bristol clearly within our area in the southwest gets so much funding, and the funding figures that you mentioned there, they're even worse than you say, because a lot of the funding that Bristol organisations get is for work in Bristol, whereas a significant portion of ours is for regional organisations like the BSO, which I think gets about £3 or £4 million a year, but that's work across the whole of the southwest. It's not all coming into the accommodation. And also, in terms of when you want that individual artists apply for, there's also a massive disparity there's many more people in Bristol get those grants than here, and in fact there's a brain drain because people feel they need to go to Bristol to get into the networks and to access the money and resources. So that's what we've got to challenge. Culture, I think, is massively important for us as a conurbation in terms of growing as a place, and moving from a resort mentality where we depend very much on tourism, but it's a somewhat one-dimensional thing, to a place where the culture is at the centre of things, and we have the kind of mentality. Obviously, not a city. We don't want to have like a city centre or anything like that. But we want to have the mentality that we have the richness and diversity of a city, and that comes through culture. My one concern with this, and it's because of the nature of the reports attached, is how the actual board and compact will be set up so that it works effectively. Because when the working group originally produced their ideas, they came up with a kind of sector-based model, and then that went to the steering group, and there was quite a lot of opposition to that, because the trouble is if you look to have somebody from from health, from the business, from young people, from everybody you can imagine, you end up with not very many spaces left for people who are primarily moving the cultural sector forward, i.e. people working in the cultural sector, people with the energy to drive the projects forward. And we are allocating one officer to this, so that the drive has to come from the board, not the officers, and therefore we move to a position where the board would mainly be sector representative of culture and heritage, and then the consultative partners would be people like business and health, who the board would regularly consult and seek to draw funding out of for the projects. So you would have like the tension between the people that are making things happen and putting, meeting monthly, say, and the consultative partners who were supporting that, who would meet on a less regular basis but would be fully integrated. So if you look at page 80, it looks like a legacy document, because you've got those two bodies, and some of the, for example, health is on both of them. It seems somewhat confused at the moment. So perhaps Mohan, you could explain what the current thinking is there.
Okay, Mohan, yep, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree, Councillor Howell. I think the two words I put on here is the engine room and like the sounding board, if you get what I mean with those. It's kind of, first of all, the documents that are in front of you now, from a governance point of view, I could not sort of change those, because those were documents, I hope you'll understand, is documents that came out from originally the work that was done, the steering group. So I did not have the mandate to go and sort of just, sort of individually change what was in those documents. Having said that, I take the spirit of what you're saying, and I do agree with it, because I don't quite know, being honest, what exactly the right format is going forward, but I'm almost more clear on what it shouldn't be, which is that we can't have kind of overseers and kind of people who are sort of primarily worried about the money being there, sort of scrutinising and potentially sucking the life out of ideas when they're at an early stage, from people who may be putting them across in a kind of a flamboyant way, and in a way that sort of, is not like our normal council meetings. And I do agree, if I've understood you correctly, Councillor Howell, is that we need, the engine room, or literally the kitchen of kind of ideas and energy and just literally, otherworldliness let's say, to make this happen. But then we need the sounding board to make sure that we've got, and we need conduits, of course, between them to make sure then that we've got that nice creative tension going between those with the ideas and those who've got the wherewithal to make those ideas really happen. I can say more, but I wonder, does that partly address it?
I mean, I was in that steering meeting, and it perhaps was never really documented properly because it fell towards the end of our term. I'm very happy to sit down with you and talk through it so that we can be sure that we're on the same page. And I know that Elspeth had some strong views on it, and I'm sure Michael was in that meeting as well. But the other point quickly is that in terms of the financing, looking down that, much welcome the financing. But what's really important to get this off the ground is to bring those people who in the arts and heritage community and all their constituent groups and the hard to reach groups, etc., that there's something that helps to bring those people out of the woodwork and actually interacting with each other as part of the process of building this compact. And for me, you know, once we're allowed to do so, that means there needs to be some funding for some networking meetings that can happen around the conurbation, so to start gathering people together on a regular basis, and also, you know, probably eventually some kind of online platform. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I see you're nodding your head there, Councillor Iyengar. I mean, we're getting into a bit of real detail here on some of this, which I think is slightly outside of the broader nature of the paper, which I think is what we're being asked to look at. But I think, Councillor Dunlop, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, it was just very briefly, we were talking about the makeup of the people on the compound. That particular sort of legacy item is really something that's open, and it's going to come down to having the right people in place, and that may not be that they necessarily represent all those sectors. It needs to be a cross section of people, because of the aspirations of this paper isn't about driving specific aspects of culture. It's about the whole cultural piece, and that needs to look across ethnicity, ability, age, and all those demographics. So that is I think that's fluid at the moment, and that, as Councillor Iyengar said, is the next piece of work. How it's going to be set up is the next step on, and that's when we need to look at that in detail, Chairman.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Councillor Dunlop. Councillor Kelsey.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Dunlop's just answered one of my questions before I've even asked it, to be honest with you. I was just about to ask about the makeup, what we are doing about making sure the makeup of the board is fully compliant with ethnicity, diversity, and all those sort of things, but she's already answered those, which I'm totally grateful for. One of the questions I'm going to have, and I may well sound like a bit of a Philistine when I come out with this, why the hell and how do we get away from this word culture? Because when you say culture to the average person in the streets, they immediately go back to the thing of ballet, ballroom dancing, museums, orchestras, and things like that. And it's not. It's a far, far bigger thing. And if we're going to do all this work, which I hope we are, we need to get the public behind us. And we need to get this across to the public in a way that the average member of the public fully understands what we're talking about. You know, keep saying culture this and culture that and cultural this and cultural that. It goes along, certainly for me, I don't mind admitting it, it goes right over my head and it totally turns me off wanting to read anything about it. So I do think we need to bring this down to the level of the average person in the community to make sure that they can all be involved in this. Because I think now I've read the documents, I think it's a great idea. I'm totally for it, because I can understand it a bit more. And I must admit, I've sat with Beverly and I've talked with Beverly about it, and she's enlightened me on a lot of things. But I do think we need to be aiming this at the members of the public, not just us as councillors. Thank you, Chairman.
Are you asking me, or
I'm asking either of you to explain it to me?
Yeah, no.
In words of one syllable.
Councillor Iyengar, would you like to respond to?
Actually, I can. Can I invite Councillor Dunlop? Beverly, would you like to say something, or would you like me to go first?
No, I'm happy to go forward if I may. It is my area, so it's within my remit. I think for me, one of the most exciting things about this is it kind of blows out the water that culture is ballet and listening to Tchaikovsky or doing this and doing that. It's the recognition of the widely accepted definition that culture isn't that at all. It's who we are, it's what we believe, it's our values, it can be what we eat, it's our heritage. You know, we have a large Brazilian community, for example, around the area. You can be sure that their definition of culture is not the same as another community, and certainly not the same as the people who are friends of BSO, and that in turn is certainly not the same as the 16-year-old lad with a skateboard under his arm. I don't think we can change the word culture. I think what we have to do is make sure that the full Monty of the word culture is understood. It's you, it's people, it's demographics, it's all those things, and make sure that it means something to everybody. And one of the important changes that I think that I've made in looking at this was this notion that culture is something you sort of put on and people pop along and participate. One of the biggest aspects of this is it's recognising all those cultural differences across the BCP area. That's the differences in ethnicity, age, ability, sexuality, all those things, and getting people to bring their culture out. And that's going to be probably the hardest part. It's removing those barriers, breaking those down, getting people to come out and share their culture. And it really could totally transform this area completely and bring everyone together, really be the glue that brings the whole place together. But it's just going to be keep at it, keep trying to change it, and it's our attitude as well. The way we approach it should percolate to the residents, I hope.
Thank you, both of you, for those answers. I'm sure you're absolutely right, and I look forward to seeing where we go further forward on this one. Thank you, both of you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Dunlop, and thank you, Councillor Kelsey, for some very relevant, pertinent points. And I agree with you entirely. Before I close up, I see that we do actually have Councillor Edwards wanting to speak, and looks like Councillor Howes also wants to have another word. So could I invite Councillor Edwards, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, we're very lucky in the area that we already have some great buildings for performances, etc. And I would say possibly an underused BIC building in Bournemouth. But what I wanted to ask was, obviously our town centres are going through complete disaster at the moment, aren't they? Retail. Not just due to COVID, but just, you know, the online shopping and everything. So our town centres are completely changing. So have the regeneration plans, have they involved perhaps some of this culture can be included in their plans to sort of revitalise our town centres in all three towns here, and in some of the little out, you know, the out areas like Kinson and that, who've got places that events can be put onto.
So, sorry, Councillor Iyengar.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Councillor Edwards, for the question. The answer is yes. I will point to one example, which is the Lansdowne project. Now, I know what's sort of made, you know, what's come to people's attention is particularly something to do with the transport, the road set up there. But I hope committee members would agree, literally the origin of that project, even though the features of it are to do with literally, you know, sort of the street scene and etc. The origin of that project completely was around literally the life and the culture, and actually having a sort of an atmosphere, a hub kind of environment in that area. Yeah. Where sort of people can be energetic, people can be doing things. And let me broaden that idea, Councillor Edwards, because in the town centres, and we stumble on an enormous topic here, of course, when we talk about town centres, which we can't do justice to here. But frankly, the only way forward, I think, for town centres, just my own view, is to think about how can it be a place for an experience for people. If retail has got a certain part of it going forward, which I think it always will have, but a diminished role compared to yesteryear, we've got to be thinking going forward, which is what is it where people will still want to come, want to be, want to see, do, gather, and all those other things. That's totally within the remit of what we're talking about here. So I'll be looking for the work that we're doing here to be not just sort of supporting or giving an input into regeneration plans, but to be literally right at the table, co-developing, co-designing whatever we're doing, not just in the 3 town centres, but literally in all the places that we think are relevant across the conurbation.
Thank you, Councillor Iyengar. Councillor Howes.
Yeah, a couple of quick points. Thank you. Firstly, absolutely, culture should be centred to regeneration, and that's why I insisted when the went at the start of this council that culture was put with regeneration in my portfolio, and the projects that we developed all had a cultural element to them. Clearly, we've lost the future high streets bid, but there was a market proposal that incorporated creative facilities within that proposal that the council could still choose to deliver by itself. And I would encourage the portfolio holders to look at that because I think it was a really good proposal and we should be trying to deliver it. The other thing is about culture. It is confusing because it has two different meanings, really. There's kind of high received culture, which is essentially large organisations, venues bringing in what is supposed high quality culture for people to sit down largely and an experience. And then there's the culture that we develop in our place that makes us distinctive. And it's that second part that we've missed out on many years. And it's partly because the large institutions have tended not to trust the smaller creators and producers because they may be a bit snooty. They want to keep that distinction between high art and something that's the creative, and the creative stuff is out of control by its nature, and it's difficult for them to judge, and that's what needs to break down. And it is better than it was between the institutions. The institutions are much more open now, but we need to really encourage at a very broad base local promoters of culture in its broadest form. So, we're talking about, visual arts and music, but, sport as well, and other aspects that make us distinctive. And we've got to get people doing things that are interesting and local, and try and get them off their sofas, and where they're watching Netflix and generic offerings from America. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Howes. I like Netflix. I like my sofa too, but could I just, Councillor O'Neill?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, somebody once said to me, culture is what you are. It's all those things that, which I thought was an interesting interpretation. Question, however, Councillors Kelsey and Edwards have mentioned in the past the importance of our language schools and universities, and both of those areas have large cultural diversity. How are we going to draw the youth of those establishments in their diversity into this framework? Thank you.
Do you mind if I take that? Yeah, a couple of ways actually. First of all, there's another piece of work that has to be done in terms of more engagement. The cultural inquiry that was done, you note there was a very small sliver of young people surveyed. So we don't have that data yet about exactly what those people like, what they want to do, what's important to them. And we're also not looking at the demographics either. But the way the cultural compact needs to be set up, there has to be representation from those educational sectors, because that's a key. Those universities are quite key, not so much in terms of participation, but also in terms of contribution as well. Because one of the things we want to do is develop the talent, develop the local talent, keep it here, and also attract new talent. So there are many facets to this. It's developing the talent we've got, attracting creative people, as well as getting our communities to come out and bring their culture to us, and then remove those barriers for other people who aren't taking part in the cultural activity. So the way that's set up and the links that will be made, we should draw that out. And if we're not, Councillor O'Neill, we're doing something wrong, but we need to get those people out.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think.
Excuse me, Chair. Could I add one final thing on the end of that?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Only one thing to add to Councillor Dunlop. So thank you, Tony. You know, the universities, they've been involved throughout in the cultural action group, and also we need to include in there Bournemouth and Poole College as well. But you know, in a sense, I don't worry about not including them. We know we'll be including them. The youth I particularly worry about, since we're talking about youth, is the ones who have not got an affiliation to a university, because actually it's a bit like kind of how will we find them? Don't know, can't answer you right now, but we must. Okay, and they're the ones I'm more concerned that we've got to make a super effort to get to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a very minor point. When I looked through the report, I didn't see some of the external agency or the agencies involved in. I didn't see anything from our major leisure or entertainment providers. For example, BH Live. I didn't see them in the list of the people that we would be engaging with in the paper, and I don't know if that's because they're included in a more generic group. But I thought, you know, they're fairly major players in some of the things that we want to do, and I just thought I'd mention it. That's all. Don't need an answer, but it's been a fascinating discussion, and one of the things that's occurred to me is that you know, the cultural aspects of the way we live and for our residents is a thread that runs through all elements of our corporate plan. You know, every aspect of our corporate plan should in some way be influenced in some way by our cultural requirements, and I think that's another way of approaching it, to make sure that all of the areas of our corporate plan does include some consideration of the cultural aspects of that particular area of what the council is doing. There's no doubt that, you know, the quality and well-being of all of our residents is really dependent on the cultural aspects of the way we lead our lives and the facilities and everything that we've got in the town. It's something that really adds value to our life and humanity for everybody. And I think that this is a really good initiative, and I really hope that we'll all sort of support it and give you all the help that you need. And it's great to see Councillor Iyengar taking up on the work that was done in the previous administration. And it's a fantastic initiative, and good luck with it, taking it forward. I think we've probably come to the end of the debate on this particular issue, unless there's anything anybody wants to add to that now. I don't see any hands being raised, in which case thank you very much, Councillor Iyengar and Councillor Dunlop, for your presentation.
Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, you're muted.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I don't know what's happened there. I don't know how far I got. Did you hear me close down the previous item? You did. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we go into agenda item 9, which is the scrutiny of transport sustainability related reports, concessionary fares, bus operator reimbursement. Now, before we get into this, there is a commercially sensitive annex to the report. So if anybody wants to get into that, then we will have to go below the line into private session because it's a non-public area. But so just be mindful of that when we are discussing this particular paper. Now, is Councillor Green available?
I am, sir.
Oh, well done, Councillor Green. Welcome. So this is your paper, I believe. Would you like to introduce it? Thank you.
Very happy to do so, and appreciate what you're saying, Chairman, about the bill amendment, because to be honest, the bulk of this paper and the discussion that we have on it is probably have to be held in camera. So I leave it to you as to whether, just after I've introduced it, whether we should go below the line or whatever you think is the right thing. But I would echo your words that if anyone has a question to ask, please think very carefully about whether there may be a commercial issue before asking it in the open part of the meeting. It's a relatively simple paper, although there are some very big numbers involved in it, and I think it's probably important just to make clear what we're talking about in this paper, because a lot of people sort of get a little bit muddled up with how the bus companies work and about what sort of subsidies they get. This is not about subsidised bus routes. There are a number of bus routes across BCP, as there are in most areas, where the local council will provide money to the bus companies so that they can keep those routes going in normal times. But the national concessionary scheme is the bus pass, which it is as it's described a national scheme, which means that anybody who has a bus pass who gets on a bus journey within the BCP area, that the council will pay for their bus fare. It's as simple as that. There's a few tiny little adjustments on that. But basically, from a bus company's point of view, it shouldn't matter whether somebody's getting on with a bus pass or paying in cash. They're left in exactly the same situation, and that is something over which we have no control at all. It's not something which we can decide that we wish to make it just BCP residents. It's not something we can say, well, how about if it ends in BCP rather than starts in BCP or anything like that. This is a national scheme. It's a national regulation which has been debated over the last 16, 17 years, and this is where we've ended up. So what it is about is that with the pandemic striking, the patronage of buses has been reduced very significantly, as we would expect, and there's more in the paper around it. But at the moment, or well, actually, certainly prior to us going into Tier 4, we were probably looking at about 60% of bus fares that were being paid before are being paid now. 60% of bus journeys being taken. A slightly lower number of that for the number of those with bus passes, but in that sort of area. And the government, in line with all of its policies and through the DfT, have said to local authorities that they would expect local authorities to continue to pay the relevant amount to the bus companies that they would have done had COVID not struck, because without that, the bus companies, rather than just finding a few routes to be unviable, will find basically all of their routes to be unviable. And that is what the Part A, the recommendation Part A, is about. We are allowed to make reductions to reflect what's happening to bus patronage locally over the last 2 or 3 years. And you can see on there that there's a 1.96% reduction, and we are allowed then, and this is part of the confidential part of it, to reduce or increase that further to reflect if there have been any changes in the services that are offered. That's not to reflect the fact that the buses are only allowed to occupy to run now at 50% of their maximum capacity, but the actual services that are offered, in other words, the routes they're running and the hours that they're running them for. And that is part of what goes through in that in the confidential part, and as far as item A, the recommendation A is concerned. Recommendation B is to say, basically, we know that this can't continue forever, and government, and they're going to put a bit of money into it as well, are expecting us as local authorities to sit down with the bus companies and to say, okay, what's a longer term plan? Because we want, particularly as an authority which is very keen on promoting sustainable transport, we clearly want to ensure that the bus routes are there for people to be able to use as they wish to, and as we would wish them to in the future as well. So that is the much easier, if you like, part of recommendation B. If it's all right, Chairman, I'm going to stop there because I think that sort of explains what it is, and the recommendation that's contained within this paper is that we comply with the government's requests and to make the calculations for the two bus companies that operate within the BCP area, and that we should reimburse them in that way.
Thank you very much, Councillor Green. Councillor Cox, I see that you've indicated. Before you ask your question, do you want me to take us below the line?
I think it's probably best.
All right then. I will move the meeting now into private session due to the confidential nature of the annex that we're about to be discussing. So for members of the public watching, we will now stop broadcasting the meeting. But when we finish the discussion, we will start broadcasting again just to close down the meeting. So with that, Democratic Services, could I ask you please to stop the live stream?
Chairman.
Thank you. And for any members of the public waiting for us to reappear, we've had a very long and interesting discussion about this particular agenda item. Essentially, the recommendations as set out on the paper stand, and the overview and scrutiny has no further comment to make on those. So that now brings us to the end of all of the agenda items for this, the first part of 2 meetings today. And so with that, I'll now close the meeting, and for those that want a bit more of this can come back and see us at 6 o'clock, where we have the second meeting for today. Thank you very much.